So I'm really excited about today's episode. It comes in perfectly with what we're trying to do at Prime. And the title is, why is there a lack of sales leaders that are female? Sales for a long time has been male dominated. I'm sure we can agree with that. However, we are starting to see a more balanced approach, and it's exciting to see we're seeing more females come into the industry. However, the challenge still remains that there's only 19% of females that are in the sales leadership positions, which is something that we need to change, and there's things that we hope we can do about that. So to discuss this subject matter and a lot more, I've brought together today 3 of the UK's most influential female leaders in sales. And before we introduce them, I just want to stress again, we want to make this interactive. So if you've got any questions, it seems like we've started already, which is brilliant. Please put them in the Q&A, click send, and I'll do my best to ask them to the panel either during or throughout the session, or at the end of the session if we've got enough time. So please get involved. So who have we got for you today? I'm sure they don't need any introduction, but I'm going to come to you just to give a little bit about your background. Mina, if you'd like to just kick us off, just a little bit about yourself, if that's all right.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Mina Whitney. I'm the regional sales manager for Europe at BrightEdge. That is ultimately a company that does search engine optimization and supports basically enterprise brands. I've been in sales for about a total of 8 years, about 6 with BrightEdge, and pretty much have been in every role from sales development to account executive, strategic accounts, and then ultimately was moved to the UK to run our sales operations and expand our European function. So great to meet everybody, and thank you for having me.
Excellent. And what's the background, Mina?
Yeah, so this is actually Bulgaria. It's called the Seven Rila Lakes. This is a hike that I did. I thankfully didn't die, but I would recommend it to everybody that loves traveling. Again, it's in the mountains of Bulgaria, so quite a nice place to go.
Perfect. Well, a warm welcome. Thank you for joining us. Nazma, over to you next, if you'd like to give us a little bit about your background.
Sure. Thank you for having me. So I'm Nazma Qurban. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer for Cognism. Cognism is a B2B contact data provider with leaders due to be compliant within Europe, and we have presence in the US. I started the role as head of sales and progressed to VP of sales, and now I'm Chief Revenue Officer. So I've had quite an interesting journey myself, which I'm really looking forward to sharing with you guys today. And I mean, I've been in sales since I was 15 years old. So yeah, really excited to be on this webinar with you all. Brilliant,
excellent. And you've got a nice background as well going on there in the action. I like it. Thank you very much for joining us. Great to have you. And finally, I've got to be a bit biased, but I would say this background is particularly quite a special background, Nicole. There's nothing like quite getting our brand in people's faces. I quite like that. Do you want to give the guys a bit of background on yourself?
Yeah, I'll keep it short, as I feel like I've been here a few times now, but I'm Nicole Plinston. I am the co-founder and sales training director at Prime. So Prime specialise in bringing new talent into the sales and recruitment industries. We give them the tools that they need to be successful and help them find their perfect sales careers. So that's just a little bit about me.
Yeah, there's the elevator pitch right there. Loving it. Okay, excellent. So we are going to kick off with our questions. Thank you again for joining us. The first question, again, Mina, if you could kick us off with this. Why did you choose sales as a career?
Yeah, so I thought long and hard about this, about how my journey started. And I know, like in our kind of prep session yesterday, I talked a lot about how I started out, but then I went back even further and I thought to myself, like, why was sales for me, and where was I actually selling before I even knew I was selling? So from like even my early days, I realized that I had that inkling to sell, to kind of what I call to hustle, right? To always win and to advance. And, you know, from school where there were fundraisers where we had to go door to door and sell, you know, Krispy Kreme donuts to raise money for the school, I actually won that contest, and I had just immigrated to America with 1 year of broken English, basically, right? And in the winter, when, you know, I wanted to go buy gifts for my family, but I only had $10, I basically went door to door, houses in the neighborhood with a shovel on my back, and asked to shovel their snow, because lucky enough to live in Chicago where it's -40 and very cold. So I made like $150 in a day off my own two hands. And I realized basically that's sales, right? I'm selling my service. I'm selling, I'm selling to people, right? And then further, when I went to university, I majored in political science and German, and I had absolutely no idea what to do with myself when I graduated because I spoke 4 languages. I was really interested in politics. I knew how to play the French horn, and pretty much I had no background in like athletics or anything, whatever, that people normally do when they're in sales. I didn't even think sales was a thing. So one day I came home and my mom was like, Mina, you know, I was cutting Kevin's hair. So Kevin is my old sales director. And, you know, he said that his company are hiring for sales. You know, you're graduating in 3 months. You might want to look into it. And Kevin asked me if you could sell. And I basically said, Kevin, do you know me? My daughter, she can sell the blind man glasses. And I basically looked at her and I was like, Ma, like, why would you ever say that to somebody? But I applied and basically got my first job with software as a service environmental health and safety company. I had absolutely no clue what I was getting myself into. So the reason I think my mom thought I should have a career in sales initially and pushed me was because she said, look, like everything you've ever done, from the Krispy Kreme donuts to the shoveling of snow to, political science, which is basically you're selling an idea to a mass of people without actually getting anything in return besides getting elected for something, which she's like, you can sell some software. She's like, the common denominator in all of those things is communication, and you're perfect at communicating. And you have 30,000 in student loans you have to pay off. So it would be a good thing to get a job that actually pays. So I think beyond the fact that I had no idea what I was doing in the beginning and my mom pushed me and gave me like, opened that door for me, I will say that I stayed in sales and chose to stay in sales because that's the big thing, right? You can start a career in sales, but why do you stay in sales? Because I loved selling great product. I loved solving problems. I loved being absolutely independent. I paid off my loans in 3 years. And I love the gratification of somebody telling me, hey, Mina, thank you so much for that thing you taught me, because that helped me close more deals. So it's a combination of it fits me, it fits obviously my personality and my drive, it fits my financial goals, and then it gives me that feeling that I can help people internally to also grow, make money, and make a name for themselves and really have a career. So that's my story.
Brilliant. I love the fact that we've got Kevin as well to thank there for you getting his. I hope his hair was okay as well, because your mum seemed like she was busy selling you into Kevin's business there. So excellent. Thank you, Mina. Nazma, why did you choose sales as your career?
I feel, I'm sure you guys have probably heard the time and time again, I feel like sales chose me. I didn't choose sales as such. I guess my story starts way back when I was 15 years old and I was looking for like a job as I was in school, and then there was this job that I found in a newspaper, and it was pretty much selling timeshares. And when I went into the office and I got the job, it was commission only, and I was just sat there with a BT phone book. For those that don't know, that are a lot more significantly younger than I am. But I had a phone book and I was basically B2C calling. I was just calling through ripping pages and then selling timeshares. And I remember being so excited about the prospect. And I just got such a buzz when I did actually end up engaging with those consumers and invited them to appointments. I then went on, and I guess that was my first taste of sales. I then studied and I worked part-time in other sales roles, like working in a phone shop. And I then graduated. I studied law at university, so I did want to pursue a career in law. And then when I started going to like having placements and doing some work experience, I just found it really boring. And I thought to myself, well, if I feel this way, and this is no disrespect to the legal profession, because everyone is different and different things really stimulate and motivate you. But I just thought to myself, if I feel this way in just 3 months, this is going to be my entire life. So I graduated, I took a step back and I thought, okay, so what do I want to do? I looked back at all the things that I have done, the things I did enjoy, and I kept going back to sales. I then thought to myself, okay, right, if I'm leaving a profession in a legal profession, potentially, and where there's lots of opportunity and I can be making a lot of money, I really need to choose a profession where I can be just as successful, if not more successful. So Google was my best friend at that time. So I was Googling all of these amazing professions, like which profession is going to get you to your goal, right? What is success to you? And for me, success at the time was to make lots of money, right? So for me, success was measured by money, right? Yeah, I guess it was a no-brainer every time that I Googled and I saw all of these like amazing CEOs and leaders of these amazing organizations. They'd started off in sales. And then I thought, why not? So that's where I started interviewing. And just like for those who've just started a new role in sales or are interviewing, I see this time and time again when I'm interviewing candidates. It wasn't simple for me. It wasn't as simple as, oh, hey, I've got great experience and therefore I just got the job. I interviewed at least in 30 different places before I actually got my first job after graduating, because it is a skill that you need to acquire. Even just that interviewing is a skill. But it made me feel like, okay, right, this is the right thing for me to do. And so that was the beginning of my journey as a sales profession, post graduation, and that was in recruitment. So I'm very thankful for my short career in recruitment. That's helped me get to where I am today.
Cool. It's interesting you mentioned leads from the phone book as well. I remember that. It's obviously it's a whole new debate and a whole new webinar to talk about how sales has evolved. But wow, yeah, remember that was hard. But it's made us of firm stuff, I think, from having to sell that way. Did you sell a lot of timeshares? Was you good at it?
I mean, I was selling like appointments, so not really. So, and it was for a short period of time. And for those who are aware of, Mina might not be as familiar, but there's a program called Office, right? The Office, Ricky Gervais, and it's filmed in Slough, and that's where I'm from. And it was an office under the office that they were actually filming at. So I was in the very same building as the office. And
Cool.
Brilliant.
That speaks volumes about where I've come from. But yeah, it was hustling for sure.
Good, brilliant, excellent. Well, warm welcome to the session. And finally, Nicole.
Yeah. So I'm probably similar, like in all honesty, it wasn't a conscious choice to go into sales for me. I actually wanted to be an air traffic controller. Long story, which I won't get into today. Luckily I didn't.
I'm so glad you're not. I'm so glad you're not. That's one thing, but fine.
Lives in my hands, it would have been shocking. So thankfully I didn't end up going down that route. But whilst I was studying my A-levels for that route, I was also working 3 part-time jobs. Like my parents had always instilled that work ethic. If you want something, you've got to go and work for it. So I had a job as an usherette. I had a job in a tea room as a waitress. But similarly to Nazma, I was also had another job in some dingy little room doing telesales with timeshare. So I was sat there in my evenings when I wasn't at the cinema, and I was going through that phone book, and I had certain letters that I was allowed to call, and I would be disrupting people's evenings. They're in the middle of EastEnders having their dinner, and I'm to get them to go to a timeshare event and sell the dream. And do you know what? It was probably one of the toughest jobs I've ever done in sales, but I think that was the first time where I thought it's so hard but it's so much fun, because when you did get someone and you got to ring that bell and everyone's really like cheering and you just got such a buzz from it. And I think that's when you learn how important a good culture and a good environment is, because I don't think I could ever sit there and do that job on my own. But because I was in an environment where we're all going through the same thing, we're all experiencing the same thing, and we were learning nitty gritty sales, like how do you keep people talking? How do you build rapport? What do you get them talking about? And the art of listening was like probably the biggest thing that they really taught us there. And I think out of all the jobs I was doing, that was the one I just really, really enjoyed. And I think that's what really took my path into sales, and I've stayed in sales and recruitment ever since. So yeah, luckily I'm a controller.
Yeah, can we just like make a note that I did not know this about Nicole? And
I didn't either.
So that is just
I found out yesterday, so I was like, wow, okay.
Mad, isn't it?
Yeah, crazy.
Brilliant. Really good to get obviously a bit about your background and what inspired you to get into sales. And I think like many people, if we're honest, sales might not have always been the initial choice, but that's part, I think, of the problem of why people may not consider it, both male and female, because they don't really understand that sales is more than what it is. So So excellent, really good to hear. So into obviously the tougher questions now. The next question is, why is there a lack of female leaders in sales? So quite a tough one to kick us off, if you don't mind. Nazma, if you can kick us off with that one.
Yeah, sure. I mean, of course, that's a really tough question, right? Why are there not enough sales leaders, female sales leaders? And I'm sure most people's perception of the situation is that actually there's just not that many females, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those sales roles. And I don't really think that is the entire truth. I think one of the reasons why there aren't as many female sales reps or sales leaders is fundamentally like the belief, right? So like the belief system that females tend to have. And there is a difference. Like we shouldn't really hide away from the fact that women and men are different, and then they are motivated and encouraged and are driven in very, very different ways. So I do think that it's definitely something, it is deep rooted in the belief of being successful, and even if you are in a female leader role, and also just pushing themselves. So for me, personally, my experience and the experience that I've had, self-doubt has always been constant and consistent for most females when they first start their role in sales or as they are climbing the ladder. There's this one quote that I heard the other day, which I just found amazing, and it was Beyonce. And the quote was, "Power's not given to you, you have to take it." And I think a lot of the times when you do have a female, and let's just say you have one female and you have 10 males basically in the team, and perhaps there's similar attributes to that female with 4 of the other sales reps, but you have this confidence and the belief instilled in those that actually put themselves forward. So I think there definitely is a lack of belief amongst women, even if they role, to actually put themselves forward, put their hand up, and also it being encouraged. So for example, I'm very fortunate to have a leader who has empowered me. So this is my CEO, James Islay. So he's empowered me. He's always encouraged me. He's the one who's basically planted seeds in me. And I don't feel a lot of individuals get that. So as managers and as other leaders, whether you're female or male, it's really important to understand and identify the different personalities that you have in the team. And if you have somebody who perhaps isn't as, hands up, then perhaps it's your responsibility to instigate that conversation, because you can see that they have the ability and that possibility. So I think for me, the reason why there aren't that many female leaders is that belief, but also that encouragement, them having the ability to have individuals around them that are empowering them and telling them to put themselves forward, because they're not going to do it by themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the point you make on that as well is, if it's still male dominated, then it's harder to have that belief when you're the one that's probably different in a way, because there's more maybe males in the team. So absolutely. And I think leaders have got a lot that they can do here to be able to bring belief into their female workforce, for sure. Mina, what have you got to add to that?
Yeah, so a little bit of storytelling over here, because I always like to put myself and my experience on the spot first and ask myself, was I a part of the problem too, right? And I think that's really important. And realistically, I want to say, why is there a lack of female leaders in sales? I don't know. There honestly shouldn't be, because we're really good at selling. And frankly, thinking about myself as an individual contributor, I was able to outpace all of my male colleagues at the time and time again, consistently, right? But you know what? It's psychological, because for me, I was making, a lot of money selling. I was comfortable. And then it was entirely, honestly, my fault for why I didn't go into leadership, because I actually had my boss, my VP, who was constantly pushing me, right? The man asked me 5 times to become a leader, and I turned him down 5 times. And I was like, no, I don't, and he kept going and he kept pushing me, but not everybody has that, right? Not everybody's going to get asked multiple times, please go and do this job. And I was like, I'm not ready. I want to sell some more. I want to do this, and then sales is such a field of meritocracy. I feel at least at, BrightEdge, it wouldn't matter really whether you're female or male. You would just get pinpointed for a role if you have what it takes, right? And so I was one of those people that you know, Nazma was also talking about, where maybe you don't have the confidence, or maybe you don't put your hand up. I was that person. At the same time, I had a counterpart, another female leader, that knew day one she came in and started cold calling that she wanted management, and she got management, and she was completely opposite to me. I never reached out to other female leaders, right? But it goes both ways, right? It's not like somebody reached out to me and said, like, do you need a mentor? So I think like female empowerment in general goes both ways. It has to come from you, but it also has to come from other senior, you know, women within your organization. But I thought long and hard about this last night to put it into 3 simple reasons why I think there is a lack of females in sales leadership. 1, there have to be women in sales for them to actually be leaders, right? So I think problem number 1 is women don't even consider sales as a career coming out of uni. Like, sales has such a negative stigma to it that a lot of women are like, I've talked to female friends of mine and I've said, look, you should be in sales. You're great. You're fantastic. Try, right? Oh no, I don't want to. You know, it's like too much stress, too much pressure. I'm like, that's one of the most flexible careers you could ever possibly have. So if women don't even consider sales as a career, you know, in the first place, that's a perception that needs to change. Number 2, personal doubt. I'm the example of that. You know, you're already in sales, you're doing a great job, but you're doubting yourself, right? You think you should go into management. Nope, not me. You know, I was the one that got asked 5 times. Like, my boss for 18 months was like, please go into leadership, for the love of God, do it, right? And finally, I said yes, right? But not everybody has that opportunity. Not everybody has that boss. You know, they'll go on to the next best person. And then number 3, there's no clarity on positions available, on leadership even being available. So sometimes we, just like Nazma said, right, you have to pinpoint that person on your team that may need that extra push, right? You have to make it clear to everybody on your team that there are growth positions available and why they should consider them, right? And so we need to set the stage and set the tone for people in our respective organizations to know that these opportunities exist. And also, I think we need to teach people to be able to promote their own brand. Like, they know all the accomplishments they have, so they need to be able to come and tell you, hey, look, I've done X, Y, Z in the last 6 months to 12 months, and I think I would really want to learn more about whatever leadership position. So again, those are my reasons, really.
Brilliant, thank you. Again, it comes down to personal doubt, like you just said, Mina, Nazma, self-doubt. Nicole, anything to add?
I think they pretty much nailed that one. Yeah, I think it is such a tough question to answer. I do think there is a stigma attached to sales, which stops females perhaps looking at it as a good career opportunity, which then leads into us not having as many to move into a leadership position. So I think as we start to shift the perception of sales and start getting people to realise it is a great career, whether you're male or female, it really doesn't matter. The skill set's still the same. We will see more progression and more females coming through. I do think there's a massive lack of role models that women, I think we spoke about yesterday, women don't really shout about their successes in the same way men seem to, or just because there's less of them, we don't hear about them as much. And I think if we were able to get more out there, I think we'd see a much bigger audience attracted as such, because I think it is hard in a very male-dominated environment. And I think all 3 of us can say that we've come through that journey ourselves, where we may have been a small minority, but we had to back ourselves. We probably had loads of self-doubt, and we really had to push ourselves forwards. And I think we've all got the same reasons why. We had someone in our leadership team that backed us, that encouraged us, that supported us to really go for it. And that's how we've all ended up where we are today. We need more leaders like that, that really encourage that progression and that growth, and recognise the strengths that females can bring to the sales team, sometimes more than guys.
I think that's brilliant, and I hope you know, I've messaged out on LinkedIn this morning that I think the majority of the people that are listening today are female. I think 88% of the audience. I think that's slightly changed now, but still, I think there's so much that female and male leaders can get from that, because like you said, if people got personal doubt, self-doubt, it's not a male or female thing. You've got a future leader in the team, you need to pinpoint them and help them and bring that out of them to put themselves forward for leadership positions. So I think leaders have got the opportunity here to make future leaders if they do the right things. And all of you have demonstrated you've had that in your career. Moving on to the next question. There's quite a few questions coming in as well, so I'll come to them shortly. But how can we get more females into the sales industry? It's known, or the reports that we've seen, and there's a few different reports out there as well. So, you know, I'll be really clear on that. There's loads of different stats that you can find. However, what they all show is that we are starting to see an increase into females coming into sales. I think we can vouch for that, Nicole, in terms of the split that we see of the graduates that we're starting to place and a more balanced approach. However, there's still not enough, and it's still more males that will come into it. How can we get more females to actually come into the industry? Nicole, do you want to kick us off with that one?
I think it comes back to what we were talking about earlier. We need to be shouting about the successes and achievements that can be gained by females in this industry sector. If we increase that female presence and share success stories and start bringing those into our recruitment processes, we'll naturally see a shift as well. So I think when you look at your recruitment process as a business, how male dominated is it? Is every stage of the interview process male? If it isn't, then we need to look at why that is. We need far better female presence to attract a more female audience. I think the statistics show that obviously the split at the moment is really poor, but I think it's only going to change if we try and change the way we attract people to sales. So if you read some job descriptions, I was having a little look last night at some SDR and BDR job descriptions, and some of the words in there are very male focused. So we're talking about hunters and aggressive approach and all these wonderful things, but I guess they don't really relate to what we're actually looking for, which is the key skill set that actually males and females do have. So the ability to build rapport, great listening skills, having great emotional intelligence, the things that make you a great salesperson is the skill set that sits within it. The motivation and all those drivers doesn't mean to say females don't have them. They may just not shout about them or share them in the same way as a man does. But because those are the things that seem to be really prominent in those job descriptions, they may not be as appealing. So I think a good starting point to really try and attract more females into the industry is to look at how you promote the role in the first place. And I think if we can work on that bit and actually change the way we're positioning the positions themselves, then I think we'll see a much better progression in getting females in.
I bet you've got any of the team members that are listening from Prime right now going, right, I best check my my job advertisements to make sure there's none of those words in it. So brilliant. Thanks, Nicole. Nazma, what can you add to that?
Yeah, so I completely wholeheartedly agree with Nicole. I think it's important to have role models, and I think that it's really important that that there's a recruitment process that is super friendly. And I think it's very fair to say that, and from your experience, I guess, with actually attracting those candidates, that you're getting a lift in all those females that are coming through the door. But where I have actually seen a gap when I'm speaking to my own peers is when they come through the door. So it's great that we want to have role models, but we don't have enough. And that's just the reality. So how do you shift it without actually having those role models present? And for me, if we just take a step back, and I think to myself, and I have been in this situation before, especially like when I just like freshly graduated, that I walk into the office, and in the office, they're all male, right? Or majority of them are male, or there's just one female, or perhaps it's just a couple of females, but they are in CS, but they're not actually in the sales role. And how would I feel about that role? And how would I feel about, does this feel right? Do I fit into this? Like, how do I fit into this? And I think as businesses, we need to take a step back and think, okay, right, in reality, we don't have that many females. So how do we make this environment inclusive as part of the interview process? So fun fact for you all, I had 12 male sales reps. So 12, and the entire total of my team was 12, right? So I had 100% males in the team. Now, it wasn't deliberate. I'm a huge promoter of like women, female diversity and everything. There was no conscious bias around me getting to that point where I had 12 males. But when I did have females walk into the office, and great, I'm a role model and I'm female, but they would still feel awkward, because of course you would think, okay, how do I fit in? How am I going? Is it going to be a lads culture? I think one of the things that we did early on, and that we still do today, it's great if I'm saying to them and I'm promoting that, okay, there's inclusivity, and yes, no, there's not that many males, but you know, it's going to be great when you join the team. That's going to like reshift the balance. but it's actually getting those males within the organization to spend time and to make them feel included. So when I did have my first few females trickle in, I'd have 2 of the reps sit down, have a conversation, talk about, you know, the role, the environment, and make them feel included, that actually it's going to be great when I start working here, even if I am one of the first few females. And so it's just doing those small things as part of the interview process to make those females feel included. That's why that's definitely something that I would recommend. That's definitely worked for us, because now I think we've got I don't exactly know what the split is, but it's yeah, it's definitely not 100% now. So I think we're looking at around 40-60.
Cool, brilliant, excellent, thanks. And Mina?
Yeah, so I think to the question, right, how can we get more women in sales? I took it a little bit more literally, and then obviously I have to add a little bit more on the interview side as well. But I think it all starts with actually, again, promoting sales as an option. So I took it upon myself, for example, to go to my old university, and I actually am thinking about doing this here in the UK, because I obviously went to school in the US, right? But in the UK, even like connecting with professors that teach business or that teach certain, you know, well, classes at universities here, to say, hey, you know, are you open to having a guest speaker? Are you open to having me come speak to your class to say that sales is a great career, right? Because there's a lot of girls in those classes that would never consider it. I think it all has to start with the foundation, right? If girls don't know that sales is an option, or if they're not seriously considering, that has to change, right? And that will only change if we shout about it, to Nicole's point, right? And it has to start with the foundation. From that point, once a girl comes to interview, right, or even sees a job posting, gender neutral words. So you're not saying, oh, we need, you know, hunters, killers. I've heard a lot, right? I've seen a lot, because again, communication, rapport building, listening, like someone's gonna see that and be like, I'm not a killer, I play the French horn, me, right? Like, I mean, that's, anyway. Also, I think involve female sales managers in the interview process, right? It's important. It's important for females to talk to other females. And I think also promote a sense of community and groups. So I'm starting at BrightEdge, women in tech in general, but we're starting it on the sales side first, right? And so I've connected with other female leaders in our other offices, and I've said, look, like, we need to create this, because to Nazma's point, right, our entire SDR team is actually male at the moment. So it's the same thing when a girl comes in, make her feel included. But otherwise, I also want her to know, hey, we actually, you know, maybe the team right now is male. We're working to improve that, right? But we're also, we have a group where you can connect with other females in other offices, right? With other female leaders. We have mentoring sessions, right? And so we're starting that within BrightEdge, because we think that will make a difference, and that will empower women to not only choose us, but also to stay, right? Because retention is another big thing, right? You can hire a girl and then she could just leave, right? How do you retain her? How do you develop her? How do you actually, and then the final part is be very clear with the growth and the promotion path in the very beginning, right? So that that girl knows starting at your company that, like, she's not just joining a team of like 10 killers, right? Guys, where maybe they're so far ahead of her that she has the confidence, that she has the skill to actually be promoted through different positions. So that's my 2 cents on that, guys.
Brilliant, thank you. It's interesting that there's a lot of there's a lot of stuff coming in, questions and chat. And I think that kind of moves quite nicely onto a question that Katie's had, because I think you've both touched on it, Nazma and Mina, is the sales culture can be laddie, and some women might find it this uncomfortable. How do we support and create a more inclusive environment? I think you've kind of both touched on that, but is there anything else you would add to that, Mina?
Yeah, definitely. I think in organizing events, you know, I sometimes would think like putting the girl in charge of organizing an event and making all the lads step out of their comfort zone and do things like that they would normally do, like, you know, whether it be, you know, yoga classes, dance, like just things that, you know, are more female, I would say, you know, put them on the spot and kind of get them out of their comfort zone so they could do something that's kind of different, you know. And I think putting, you know, putting people together and having them kind of listen to each other about the way that they think and they do things, right? In terms of, you know, the girl may have I have a totally different way of doing things to my male counterparts, and like having those sessions where we all sit together in one room and I learn from them and they learn from me. Sometimes I've gotten feedback where it's like, ooh, I never actually thought to ask that question, you know, and that actually opened a door to something that I was completely unaware of, right? But it was natural for me to ask it, right? But it was kind of unnatural for maybe my male counterpart to ask it. So having those really open and honest conversations, I think, is really important, and putting everybody a little bit outside of their comfort zone, right? Like guys have their fantasy football and whatever brackets that they do, but at the same time, you know, let's make them do something a little bit different, right? Let's have the girls and the guys do something together. I think Neil and Nicole, you guys had a good example from recently, something at Prime. So yeah, that's it for me.
Yeah.
Good example.
Well, it was though, wasn't it? We and I think we can be honest with that. Is we started having a five-a-side football team, and it was all the lads, you know. So and it was kind of, we played a few games, and it was great. And but it's then somebody speaking out, also called Nicole, said, well, why is it just the lads? And I think that's absolutely right. And we ended up having a mixed game of five-a-side, and Nicole got injured. So.
I think the one thing that I want to add, because we also have like a five-side team that the guys love to, like, yeah, it's part of what they do. And yeah. I guess for me, the one thing that I just want to stress here, which might be a bit controversial, but I'm not really focused on getting like gender equality. I'm really focused on getting like diversity in thought. And I think that you can get that diversity in thought by bringing in different people with different ideas and thoughts. And I also don't want to take away the things that people enjoy. So for example, if like, you know, the guys, there's, you know, three like individuals that get on really well, and then maybe they might go out separately, but it's the same with the females. So trying to create events that are completely inclusive and ask people if they want to join or not, I think is something that we've been doing, but trying to just keep it as open as possible and having it specific to like genders.
Yeah.
I think is like really important, because you can have the same, and I'm sure you guys have always, like, you also been privy to this or in your experiences, that you also can start basically creating like an environment where
100%
groups, right? And then
yep.
The girls' nights where they spend time just bitching about the guys and how it's so laddie and we're going to do our own thing now. And it's negatively driven, right? It's not driven because it's a natural course of a relationship or, you know, people creating like new bonds and relationships. It's just like, oh, you know, yeah, F the guys, like, let's just do something.
That's so true.
And that is something that I have been so conscious about, because I really, really do not want to get to a point like in the organization where females might feel like, okay, right, there's so many guys here, let's just do something ourselves, or yeah, these are the challenges that we're having with females, and like, let's check ourselves. Because so many times, and I'm sure, and I know that you guys are going to agree with me, especially like female leaders, because we're here for a reason. Like, we do not create our own narratives in our head, we take things as face value, and we gotta, when a situation happens, we got to check ourselves. It's not because something happened because we're female. And that's happened. So many mentees have come to me, so many people, even like within my organization, when you have situations and you think, actually, would that happen if I wasn't a female? But then really check yourself and then try to like, yeah, try to really, and it's that mentality, right? It's the narratives that we're creating that actually prevents us from being leaders, or and that inclusivity, right?
So Nazma, I think I'm so glad you brought that up, because I was reading a KPMG report last night about it. I'll actually send it to you, you might really enjoy it, about female leaders in the industry. And one quote that really stood out to me was like, 70% of women interviewed said that most of their conversations amongst each other are about the challenges they face in the workplace, instead of the accomplishments that they have and where they see themselves, which to me, like, that hurt. That really hurt to see, because you know, when we get together, we need to talk about how to empower each other and how to move forward. To your point, right? Is it really because you're female or not, right? And there are cases where I'm sure okay, being female has something to do with it, right? But most of the time, right, it's all about our perspective, right? And what we really like, how we're having conversations with each other and what are we talking about. And your point about also team events, right? Make it as inclusive as possible, but give people options, right? But with you know, with my well, with Laura on my team anyway, hi Laura if you're listening, but like Laura, one of her incentives that we talked about is like, oh, if you close X amount of deals, like I'll take you to Face Gym, you know, and we'll do like brunch and Face Gym. But like if I ask Tom on my team, like I don't know if Tom would want to do this, right? Tom might want to do something else that's more like laddie, right? Or whatever. But having those options and having your manager be able to understand you, I think means so much to both males.
100%. And I have males in the team that literally would like, cannot think of anything worse than like doing something that is like very like culturally, they just do not like. So there's so, and then they're just like, no, I wouldn't be involved, or would you be interested in this? No. And yeah, they are like different events that are going on and people just organizing it. And even the traits that the females have, and the traits that is like self-doubt, for example, like we just spoke about, or like putting your hands up, or, you know, leaning in. A lot of the males that I'm working with also have those traits. So it's just a diversity in characters and personalities. And whenever we're hiring somebody, we're thinking, okay, right, how is this person going to shift the dynamics of the team? And
exactly,
it's going to be like a positive shift. And having a female is like a very obvious shift, right? It's a very obvious shift, but I don't think that's a core driver in like getting to that equality, right? Because, yeah.
No, I think, again, it's interesting what we're saying, because what you're basically saying is similar to why a female or male, when you want to motivate anybody within your sales team, you've got to get under their skin to find out what motivates them. That's no different to what you're saying, male or female. You know, there's no difference here. It's about treating people as individuals and letting them be included in what they want to be included in, and not forcing it. Because I think businesses may be making that mistake where they're trying their best with the right intentions to get the equality and the splits right, but what they're actually doing is alienate themselves from people that may not want to do what somebody else wants to do. So they're trying to get it right, but probably getting it wrong in terms of what you're saying. As time is moving on, we are coming up to the final kind of couple of questions. Well, final question for us, and then if we've got time, anything else that's come in, which has been loads, which is brilliant. How can we get more females into leadership positions? There's an interesting question that came in from Alice Smith. It's about a McKinsey report on women in the workplace in 2016, which actually says women are often hired and promoted based on past accomplishments, whereas men are hired and promoted based on future potential. So I suppose that kind of comes in quite in line with that question. How do we get more females into leadership positions? Nazma, do you want to kick us off with that one?
Yeah, I mean, again, that's a really tough one. It's such a tough question, because I do feel like we all have our own journey, right? And we can't basically create like our path or where we want to go, or our ambitions based on like the successes that we've seen, right? Because then we would never achieve half the things that we've achieved, right, in our, you know, in our lifetime, and things that we see around us. So I think for me, like, how do you encourage more leadership? And I guess, you know, exactly what Mina used the example, you know, of herself and her own journey. I think you can't force somebody, right? Like, at the end of the day, like, even if you see somebody with potential, like, you can't just turn around and say, okay, right, I think that this is the right thing to you, because someone just needs to feel like they're ready. But I think being fair, understanding people's personalities and empowering them, telling them that it's possible. I'm also, and I've always been like this, like, I'm ambitious, and I always believe that there's an opportunity coming, and I tell my team time and time again, like every time that we have like any big kind of presentation or motivation, I say, you always need to work like the opportunity is just going to come like tomorrow, right? And you never know what's going to happen, because when you're at that stage, then, and you're prepared for the opportunity, like you're going to be right for that opportunity. So don't even worry about what's going to happen tomorrow, or whether the opportunity is like right in front of you and you can see it. You just need to work like that. So I think like it's just such a difficult like question for me to answer. Like, I mean, so it was, well, the question was like, how do we get more sales leaders? I think just being role models, and if you want to go for something, just have a very clear vision, put your hand up, talk about it, talk about what you want to do, get feedback from your leaders, from your peers, because their perception is also really important, and work towards getting to that stage. And be the example that you want to see in the world, right? Like, be the example that you want to see. If you're ambitious and you want to get that next promotion, work really hard so that it's easier, because it's happened before, right? So people see examples of that. So I think, yeah, I'm sorry if that wasn't a very clear.
No, I think the bit that I think really hits home is the fact that you've got to put your hand up. And I think this is the part of it. Equally, we're saying that leaders are going to have to try and identify people, but at the same time, you've got to put yourself in the position. You know, you've got to make sure that you put your hand up and put your name in the hat, because you're never going to win if you don't. So have that confidence as well.
Look, if I'm a female, I'm like an ethnic minority, and if my success was based on me looking, you know, up and looking around me and looking like on LinkedIn and trying to find somebody who looks like me, that is a CRO. I mean, I wouldn't be where I am. So really, sometimes you just need to take a step back and just think about your story, your narrative, what you want to achieve, regardless of whether you see that it exists. Like, just create that for yourself.
Perfect. Thank you. Mina?
I 100% agree. And I have so many things I want to say, but I know we're short on time. But to Nazma's point, right? I'm Bulgarian. I immigrated to America with my family in 2003. If I go on LinkedIn and I look for the next Bulgarian CRO female, like, I might as well just keep looking and, like, I don't know, change careers, right? Like, English is a second language. I'm not selling in my mother tongue, right? Like, so honestly, like, we need to pick ourselves up by our own bootstraps. That 70% of women talking about challenges versus empowerment at work is scary. Next time you have a conversation with a female colleague, for everybody listening, let's all make a conscious effort to talk about how we can actually improve, move forward, how you're good and how you could get better and how you could be a role model for somebody else, right? Not just what sucks at work. I'm not saying don't talk about what, you know, challenges we have, but I always tell my team, if you're going to come up to me and ask me a question and ask me for advice, unless you can answer the question first, and then we can talk about what you think, don't come to me, right? So if you have a challenge, how are you going to fix that challenge? And then how are you going to voice that you have a concern that maybe your manager in your company needs to fix as well? That's number one. Number two, right? My mother always says, the definition of insanity is doing things the same way over and over and over again and expecting a different outcome. Please, right? For all of us women, we need to think about how can we actually be more agile. And that goes for guys too, right? Not just for women, actually, in general. So I take that back. But I came to my mother crying 3 months into my SDR career, being like, I suck and I didn't hit my goal. And I'm like at 7, then I'm at 3, then I'm 50%. And she sat me down and she said, look, like, we did not come to America for you to be sitting here crying to me. I don't care if you have a team full of boys. You go into that office tomorrow, you figure out all the things you've done wrong, and you come up with a plan and crush every single one of them. Boys, girls, aliens, who cares, right? Do things differently, right? That is, she basically, I mean, she basically told me, like, lead, right? Lead yourself so that you can lead others. Third of all, the girl on my team, Laura, hello, if you're listening, when I stepped into my role at BrightEdge, one conversation I'll remember we had is like, oh, you know, there are so many guys I'm selling to. I just don't have the confidence. I feel like maybe they're not taking me seriously because I'm a girl. You know, we were on calls and basically we had like me and another leader and then our prospects. And Laura was like, well, I don't know, you know, where should I speak up and where should I just let somebody else speak? And I sat her down after that call. I'll never forget it. And I said, who knows the most about your deal, Laura? Who? Me. Who built the business case? Me. Who can answer all the questions? Me. So why the hell are you staying quiet? Don't let people talk over you, because they're not talking over you because they want to. They're just doing it because they're your leaders and you're not talking yourself. So literally open up, let go, right? You should see her now. You should see her now. She's running those calls and running those business cases, and she's the boss of her own deals. I don't even need to talk on those calls when I'm supporting and I'm her manager. Like, so it's a change of perception, right? Yes, there is unfairness in the world. Sure, that's just the world, guys. But at the same time, like, it honestly is all about me as a manager building the confidence in the people that need it, male or female, right? But those people actually having the foundation and having the ability to actually move forward, to actually not talk about the challenges, to actually come up with solutions to those challenges before they go crying to their colleague or to their manager. What is your problem and what is your solution to your problem before you come tell me about your problem? And then obviously if I see a problem, I'll address it, right? So it's a two-way street. And so think about that, right? Oh, one last thing, and then I'll shut up, I promise you. But like, this is, I feel really passionate about this because I've seen it many times. Jesus, like we go to our sales conference or we'll go to President's Club. We're sitting, you know, in Mexico or in Jamaica sipping on margaritas. And it's like, mingle, use that time, go make friends with your CEO, go make friends with your CRO, go approach people and ask them awkward questions. Have you written down all of your accomplishments from the last 12 months, every single good thing that you've done for your respective company? And does your boss know those things? I tell my boss all the time what I do really well. He knows. I text him. Promote your brand. That's nobody's fault, right? If you don't want to do that.
No, absolutely. You've got to promote yourself for sure. Brilliant. Thank you so much. Final question, Nicole, you can kick us off with this. And if just due to timing, really, if we maybe keep it to your best bit of advice that you could give, one bit of great advice that you could give to inspire females to get into sales, what would it be?
I would just say, don't be put off by perception. Think about what you want from a career. Is it progression? Is it money? Is it adding value? Is it development? What is it you really want? And look at what you're good at too. Like, and if both of those align to sales, then that's the career path for you. Go for it. Don't look at all the perception around it being male dominated and everything else. It doesn't matter. Promotion will soon become based on ability, not gender. And I think ultimately, you shouldn't be afraid to stand out. Like, you actually get an opportunity to stand out right now. So take it now rather than when it changes later and it's harder to. The skill set you need isn't based on your gender. It's an ability and it's a skill set. And if you've got it, then promote it, use it, and don't be put off by perception.
Brilliant. Excellent. Great advice. Mina, finally, what bit of advice would you give to get more females into sales?
Oh, gosh. I mean, just think about what sales means. Think about how great actually sales is. Females think sales doesn't have flexibility. It's hard. No, it's the most flexible job. If you're really good at it, you could sell from anywhere. You could be on a beach somewhere selling, closing your deals. I've done it, right? Think about the fact that you can make a lot of money doing it, right? You get the satisfaction of helping your customer, but I always think, I don't understand people who don't work for commission. Like, you do all this overtime and all this work and all these projects, get paid for it, right? And then you build so many relationships, right? Females always think sales is like this thing about like, oh, it's so hard and it's like salespeople are so annoying. Some of my best friends are my clients that I text all the time, right? It's just, really do some research on what sales is because the perception is so wrong. Yeah. That's it.
Brilliant. And I think you bang on with that. There is a perception, there is a stigma, and maybe that is the way in certain places, but it's certainly changing, and we've seen that dramatically. And I advise anyone that's thinking about it, go and ask, because until you ask and research it, you don't know the answer. Nazma, to kind of finish off then, what advice could you give to women looking to start a career in sales?
So if you want to have a career in sales, you really need to understand like why you want to get into sales, because it's going to be very tough. It is very hard. It's not as simple as, just doing a job and training. There's a lot of hours that you put in. You need to constantly be learning, constantly be evolving. And in order for you to do a great job, you really need to understand like what your drivers are. Now, my main driver, and most of the drivers that I've kind of like learn from those who are incredibly good at their job, is that they want to be in control of like pretty much like their destiny, and also they want to see their hard work at the end of every month. So if they put in the hard work, they want to see what they get out. And for me, if you want to have a career where you're not just living, I could not even deal with having a job where I know what my salary is going to be at the end of the month, every single month, and then it just lists by a few percentage. For me, that is completely absurd. So if you want to take control of your life, and you want to basically take control of your career, and you want to basically see the reflection of your hard work, then sales is the right role for you. All you got to do is put in all of the hard work. So just, you got to think about exactly what you want. And if that is exactly what you want, then just put in the hard work and create your own narrative. Don't worry about what's going on and what perception, exactly what the both, you know, Mina and Nicole both said. Don't worry about the perceptions. You can create your own reality. Head down, focus, learn, take pride in your job, and yeah, you just you know, anything is possible, right? You will find a career that you could accelerate, where you could accelerate your profession like sales. It's just,
that's the thing. I think in sales too, one last point I want to make, like if you're really good at what you do, like companies will create jobs for you. They will literally create titles and jobs and functions that didn't exist before. Like you're the catalyst for change.
Yeah.
Cool. Brilliant. Well, we could probably have chatted for another hour on this subject, and apologies for anyone that's put questions in we've not had time to answer. I'm sure if you reach out directly to any of the panel, they'd be more than happy to give you any advice after this if there's anything else that you would like to do. So check them out on LinkedIn. There's some amazing takeaways from today's webinar. It's been amazing. So thank you so much, Mina, Nazma and Nicole. So much value has been given. I think a couple of key things that for me that I've taken away was, number one, you talked about females having self-doubt. You've got to believe in yourself, whatever career choice you decide to take, and sales is certainly something you need self-belief to be successful in. Leaders that have been listening in, male or female, you've got to embrace it. You've got to make sure you identify, and the motivators are no different, whether you're male or female. Find out the motivators, bring that out, and your future leaders will come of it. Don't force things. We mentioned before, we all want equality, we all want these things, but don't force it. People will do what they want to do, so give them the option. And most importantly, at the end, I'm sure if it's inspired one or two people, if not more today, you've all said with females, you know, look into it, give it a go. You'll be amazed what you'll find if you just go and ask the question. It's been an awesome webinar. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you also for everybody that's listened in. If you found it valuable, then please do give us a shout out on LinkedIn. And also you can join us next week for episode 10, where we'll be discussing how to utilize technology to increase your sales performance. Check out Prime's LinkedIn this afternoon for more details. Thanks again to our free speakers. Truly, you are awesome. Thanks for everybody that's listened in. Keep safe, keep well, and keep changing the perception of sales. Thank you very much. See you next week.